Hey everyone, this is Anthony. I'm also known as AntDroid on a bunch of different websites and on our NCAA Next Discord channel. So today I want to go over a few things about our NCAA Next Football '06 mod for the PlayStation 2 emulators. And I guess the first thing we want to show you today is ncaanext.com is our website. And here you can find links to download our mod, also setup instructions, and a few other things like templates and other good goodies if you want to go into the modding scene yourself. So today I'm going to actually talk about how we set up the PlayStation 2 emulators, um, as well as setting up the textures in our mod and to how to install the NCAA Next 23 full modification. I guess the first thing I want to show you guys is our wiki page. So if you in that setup, or you can go to wiki.ncaanext.com. This has a bunch of tutorials on how to set up the mod, as well as some little bits and information about how to do some your own modding and some other helpful videos. I will put a link to my YouTube video when this is ready on the site too. But the first thing you want to do when you check the site is kind of go through this in order. It starts with 0 for frequently asked questions, and then the first part will be about setting up your emulator. So you'll want to start at actual 1, and then read some information about which system it works for. And then from there, you can go to the direct 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, depending on which console you're using. And then you'll want to follow to step 2 and 3. In today, I'll actually go over this step by step for the people who use Windows, and will be using PCSX2 emulator. This mod will also work on Android using AetherSX2, which also can be used for the Mac M1 and also M2 and some other ARM-based systems. There's also setup guides if you use the Xbox Series S or Series X consoles, and as well as a new guide we put up for the Steam Deck. Each of these have their own versions of the PlayStation 2 emulator, or multiple versions in some cases that you can try out. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, step 1 here is go obtain the PCSX2 emulator. So there's already a direct link to it, but if you don't want to, you can go to their website at pcsx2.net. This is the original PlayStation 2 emulator that's been around for over a decade now, and they are actually 20 years according to this website. And all the other emulators like Aether SX2 are based on the source code of this project. So you go to the very top, there's a download button. You actually want to ignore the stable release. The stable release is quite outdated now, and it doesn't have the features we need to do the mod correctly. So you'll want to go to the nightly release, which is the second section here called nightly builds, and you can download the version that you want for the operating system you use. So it works on Windows computers, also Linux, and also the Mac OS if you're using like a traditional Mac, MacBook Air or MacBook Pro that use the Intel chipsets. In my case, we're going to be downloading the Windows version. 64-bit, most Windows now are 64-bit, so it shouldn't be a problem. And if you have a computer that's, I guess, 2012 or newer, you'll want to use the AVX version. If you have an older computer, you'll probably want to use this version, but more than likely it won't work very well, this mod anyway. And then for what I'm going to show, I used the Qt version. This is the newest interface with the newest features. If you don't like that new interface, the old interface is also available. But the Qt is a lot simpler to walk through, and also more just easier to use in general. I actually already have this downloaded, so I'm not going to re-download it again. But we'll go ahead and close the browser and show you what to do next. So when you download the file, it'll be in either a zip or in this case a 7-zip file. You just open it up in your unzipping program. In my case, I have WinRAR, and it opens up like this. And I'll just want to extract it to any location. I'll just extract it to my desktop, call it PCSX to 1.7, and just let it do its thing. Where did it go? I have no idea where it went. Let me try that again. Oh, sorry, it went to my other screen. That's why I couldn't find it. Okay, so here it is. When you open it up, you'll see, it has a bunch of folders and then the executable. One of the nice things about the new version is it has an updater. This will automatically run when you start the program. So first thing you want to do is start the emulator. See, it automatically showed the updater, and there's already a new version available. I'm just going to do this later for now. So in here, you'll want to set up your system. So once you run it for the first time, a whole bunch of new folders have been generated, including a BIOS folder. That's where you want to put your PlayStation 2 BIOS that you have. A bunch of cheat folders, memory card folder, and this textures folder is now created. So these are the important folders to keep in mind because we'll be using those later. So right now, add game directory. I can just put one. I can just create a new one folder in here called games, and that's where my games will go. Then you'll want to go to settings, and we'll just kind of walk through these one by one. The interface, you don't really need to change anything here unless you want to. Game list, so we just worked on that. So BIOS, right now there's no BIOS in here, so you'll need to have a PlayStation 2 and dump your BIOS. There's lots of instructions on how to do that online, and what to do and how to get a BIOS. But I already have a BIOS available, so I'm just going to pull one here. I'm just going to pull a bunch of them actually, because I'm not sure which one I want. And put this in the BIOS folder. And press refresh, and now they show up. To get this mod to work correctly, or at least not work correctly, but work the best, you'll want version 2.0 or higher. I'll just pick the newest one, 2.2. Emulation settings, you don't really need to change anything. Well, you can change the cheats, but this is not totally necessary anymore if you use our mod. In system, you don't need to change this unless you uncheck this enable game fixes and then enable compatibility patches. If you uncheck this, then you'll have to manually update this section. If you have these checked, the emulator will automatically load up settings for every game that has in its database. And in NCAA 06, it will probably change the clamping mode up here and down here from normal to extra plus preserve sign. And this helps fix some of the graphical issues in the game. If you don't have it enabled, you'll see that some graphics are missing. Stadiums are going to be missing, and the grass will probably be green, or sorry, will be black instead of green. And a bunch of other things are going to be kind of screwed up. Okay, actually, while we're here, if you happen to have some slowdowns, one thing that you can change is change the cycle rate to 75%. That does seem to help. In my case, I use 75% on when I play on my phone or on Android device, just to give it a little bit of a speed boost. On a computer, at least my computer, I don't really have to do this. Let's see. In graphics, you'll want to choose your graphics card. In my case, I have a AMD graphics, so I switched it from default to AMD. This may not be needed, but if you have, let's say, another graphics card, you'll want to make sure that it's choosing your best graphics card and not the default, which could be potentially be the Intel or AMD one built in. Automatic render is perfectly fine. You also can kind of play around, see which one works the best for you. Vulkan typically is the best, but in some cases, like on AMD graphics, Direct3D usually works better, and for Intel or NVIDIA, sometimes OpenGL works better. In my case, it ends up usually being Direct3D, but I'll just leave it at automatic because it works fine. Aspect ratio, you'll want to change this to widescreen most likely, unless you don't like widescreen. Deinterlacing, if you use our mod, change that to none. It'll improve graphic quality significantly and reduce some issues with graphics. And then everything here you can kind of play with if you want to. It's not necessary, but these sometimes improve graphics, sometimes doesn't. Let's see. In the render section, you'll see it's default to native. This is the original PlayStation 2 resolution, so this is what it was made for, old CRT TVs back in the day. With newer monitors, you'll probably want to set it to a better resolution, 720, 1080, etc. And this will also depend on how well your graphics card and computer can handle it. With my computer, I can probably run it up to 6x without too much issue, or maybe even higher, but my monitor only supports 1440p as its max resolution, so I typically just leave it at 1440p, which is 4x. But you can play around with this. The higher the better. A lot of our uniform textures are made to go up past 4K or at 4K, so if you go higher, you will actually see a benefit. But then it might be limited to your monitor. For mip mapping, you have to make sure this is off. If it's on or even set to automatic, you may not get our uniform and other graphic textures to load correctly. For texture filtering, you can leave this at default. Trilinear can be set to either automatic, off if you don't have a very good graphics card. If you have a good graphics card or good computer, you might try trilinear first. We've seen that this does help with some grass textures and some sky and grass mostly, and some slightly improved resolution. Anisotropic filtering, I usually try to max this out as much as I can, but 8x is fine. You can leave the rest to kind of what you feel like. None of these are super important, but I do like preloading on at full. It's already set to default. And then these ones here, you can also just leave at default if you want. It's kind of up to you. If you have a really good graphics card, you might want to click on this button here. Mine is not really, so I'm just going to leave it unchecked. And then the other major tab is the texture replacement. So if you click here, you'll see this is where we press load textures, and this will allow the mod to actually get loaded, the graphics portion of the mod to get loaded. If you want to actually do your own graphics editing later on, you'll want to check dump textures when you want to actually start modding. This will basically take all the in-game graphics that haven't been modded yet and dump it into a folder, and then you can look at what files you can modify in terms of graphics. But we'll leave that off. It does slow down your game a little bit if you have it on. None of these others need to get changed. Audio probably doesn't need to get changed. Memory card, right now there's no memory cards. That's why I say missing. You have to create one, so there's a button here to create. I like using, and what they recommend here now is the memory card folder. We can call this NCAA football. Press OK. And now it creates a memory card folder. So if you go back to your PCSX folder here, you'll see if in mem cards, now there's a folder for the save files. And the main difference between a folder and one of these normal 8, 16, 32 memory card files is the folder basically has all the contents of the memory card file already when you have it available. I guess I can open up my own here on a different folder. You'll see here, these PS2 files are just the memory cards, but you can't open it very easily. You'll need another program called MyMC to open it up and see what's inside. If you have the memory card folder, it actually has a nice folder structure here, so you can open it up and go directly to your save file, which are these BASLUS files, and then you can modify game files if you want to go to the next step and start doing database editing. So that's a nice thing for people who like to mod, but it's not necessary, but it does save a little bit of time for modders. Okay, so that's basic setup of your game. Oh yeah, actually, once you get the memory, when you make the memory card, it doesn't load it by default. You'll actually click on it and drag it into one of the ports. So I just dragged the NCAA football one I created into port 1 here. And if you want to eject it, you press this eject button. All right, next step. I think we're set up here. So I'll just close this. There's no games yet, so nothing's going to show. One thing I like using is pressing this button. This will load. Well, there's no games yet, so it won't show anything. I turn on the toolbar under View, and that does open up a bunch of different buttons here, which makes it a little bit easier to see some of the features of the emulator. If you have a Xbox or PlayStation controller, you can pair that with your computer, and then go in here and map the controller settings in here. By default, a lot of if you have an Xbox or a PlayStation 4 or 5 controller, it will automatically load some binding. But if you do have a PlayStation controller, make sure you press the DualShock button up here. It won't work if you don't have it. And if you have an Xbox controller, enable this X input. So 2 things to keep aware of. And then one of the other things I like using under hotkeys is this toggle frame rate limit. It's set to keyboard F4, but you also, if you click on it and then press a button on your controller, you also can toggle it with your controller. And this helps speed through a lot of the portions of the game that if you don't want to wait around, you can just press that button and it'll speed right through it, which is really, really convenient. And I'll show that a little bit later here. Okay, so now that that is done, we got the emulator set up. Let's go back to the browser here and look at the next step. So we done 1, which is, well, we have Windows. We went through the emulator setup here, which is all I just walked through. And then the next step is go to step 2, which is installation of NCAA 06 Next textures. So first thing you want to do is go back to our website, which is, again, ncaanext.com, or you can go directly to download.ncaanext.com. And if you go here, you get to the latest version of our mod, which is currently, as I recorded this, Next 23, which is also called version 12. So version 12 has 2 different parts to it. One part is the textures. So each version will have a separate section for installation towards the bottom of that section, and that gives you some specific, because some of the files may change between version to version. But there's 2 files. One is the textures and one is the actual game mod. The game mod is not required, but if you want to use NCAA 06 as it was built in 2005, then you just need the textures. You don't need to do this other thing. But in that case, you will only have the 2005 leak set up. You won't have some of the new features we created, but you'll have the 2005 rosters and 2005 teams. If you want a more modern version of the game, which includes 7 brand new teams, including like Charlotte and Coastal and UT San Antonio and Liberty and some other teams, you'll want to use the Next 23 mod. In addition, I'll go over some of the details later when we actually open the mod, but we have like new league setup, new league structure, a lot more transfer modifications, year setups, names, all sorts of stuff. So we can walk through that a little later after we create the mod. So back to here. The next setup is the textures. So actually, you can download both files depending if you want the mod or not. But you can download both of these. They're a little big, 1.54 gigs, and almost in half a gig for the other one. So it's a little bit over 2 gigs total. So it may take some time depending on your website or web internet capability. In my case, I already downloaded it. So there's 2 here already available. So the first thing we'll do is look at the textures again. So we will open up the textures in zip. So right here, I'm just using the normal Windows built-in zip unzipping feature, and it opens up a second folder. You'll want to open up that one, and then you'll see a directory of a bunch of different files. If you're using the default game, there's some extra little bonuses here, cheats, which help improve some of the graphics. So I'm just gonna help walk through what they are. So cheats are de-interlacing patches. So this basically helps improve some of the visual quality. Covers is an image that we created for those who want to create a file or create a cover. This is one of the covers we have. We have another cover, obviously, on our website here with Dylan Gabriel. Or sorry, Bryce Young. Sorry, it was Dylan Gabriel. This is Bryce Young now. And then we also have the DVD image, which is the actual disc, if you want that. And then there's game patches. So some of the Next 23 mods, I've been able to extract certain files out of it. You can also download or install these. It's installed the same way as the Next 23 mod. So we can walk through that a little bit later. But this general combo patch has a lot of the features that make the old game work just like the new game. But it's not updated anymore, so it's a little outdated now. So the Next 23 will have a lot more new features that have been added since V10. Mem cards. So in here, there's 2 files. One is on 22 rosters and 05 rosters. So these are named 2005 rosters. These roster files are only for the original game. Do not use these with Next 23 because it will screw up the game. And you won't have players on certain teams, and you'll have teams that are missing and all sorts of other issues. So only use this on NCAA 06 vanilla. And then there's the textures, and if you have an Xbox and you're playing the original game, there's an Xbox memory card here too. But basically, the textures folders has this thing already kind of built up for you. Replacements, alternate replacements. I'm just going to go ahead and show you what to do first. Basically, if you want to play just the Next 23 mod, you'll want to take the textures folder and just drag it and put it into, oops, wrong one. You want to open up your PCSX folder here. So this is where the emulator we downloaded earlier is. You'll want to just drag it. This is not going to work very well. Here's the folder. You're going to drag it and just stick it in the folder. And it's going to take a little bit of time. Here's the status here, because it's pretty big. It's almost 2 gigs here once unzipped. And then if you're going to play the original 06 game, you can just highlight the mem card and cheats and also drag it over, and they'll be placed into the cheats and mem card folder in here. And then if you want to use the named rosters, you'll go in and in your memory card setting and insert that memory card with the named rosters on it. So while this is doing this, it's going to take quite a bit of time here. I'm going to start getting you guys ready for the next part of the mod, which is the Next 23 ISO mod. So the first thing we want to do is download this program called ImageBurn, imgburn.com. There's a download button here. And what this program does is I'm going to open it up because I already have it installed. So give me a second here. But what this program does is it will, it's basically a CD burner program. You can use it to create new CDs or DVDs. Sorry, 1 second here. Create new CDs or DVDs. You also can take like a PlayStation 2 disc and create an ISO file out of it. In the case that we're using, we're going to be creating an ISO image from a set of files and folders. So that's what this is here. Okay, once you have it installed like I have here, you can open it up and just have it ready to go. The next step is to actually have your NCAA Football 06 ISO file. This is the vanilla version of the game, which is this file. I'm going to double click on it. And what happens if you're using Windows is they'll open up, Windows will create a kind of a DVD drive here with the ISO already open, like a normal Windows Explorer file folder. What we want to do here is now create a new folder on your desktop. We're going to call it NCAA Next 23 or whatever you want to call it. Just somewhere to put these files. Where did my file go? For some reason, it opened up to my new browser or my second window here. Okay, so then you're going to take all the files from the ISO image folder and just drag it into the new folder that you just created. So we can modify the ISO image. And then once you're done with this, you can also just right click and eject this to get rid of it. Okay, so this image is now been transferred to a folder on my desktop in Next 23 folder. So this is all the files of the original game. If you go back to the Next 23 site, hopefully you've already downloaded this Next 23 ISO mod.zip file. I already have. So when you have that available, I have too many folders open now. Here's my download folder. So this is this file here, Next 23 ISO mod. We're going to open up this file. And what we're going to do is, again, highlight everything and just drag it or extract it to the Next 23 folder. And it's going to ask you, do you want to replace the 10 files? Press yes. And what this is doing is now we're going to be modifying the game, essentially. So we've made, I can show you again what files we've updated so you guys can see what we've done in the past, or for this mod. So the mod has this SLUS 212.14 file. This is the actual game executable, so it's kind of like the application itself. We've done a ton of modding to this file to change the way the game behaves, like adding, now we have up to, in this mod we have probably up to 500 transfers, but in the upcoming version we can have up to 1,500 transfers per year. We changed the transfer to not have the 1-year waiting period. We've modified game text in here. We've modified the visual quality. We've also changed, all sorts of stuff. I can't even think of all of it. There's a whole list of it actually on this Next 23 mod here. Changed the starting season to 2022, duplicate jerseys, permanent Pac-12 or Conference USA championship, adding 1 to 2 star recruits, a ton of other stuff. And there's more coming. We've done a lot more. And then in the data folder, so in the actual game disk, there's a folder called data where all the graphics files and databases are stored. We've made some modifications to the music. We've created 7 new teams and also updated some textures for stadiums. So we've updated field data and stadiums. The league data is where the league database is. So that's what we've edited to change how the conferences look, how divisions look, how new teams are added, and all sorts of other stuff within this. Game data is playbooks and other random stuff in there. We've also updated stream data, which is a database full of all sorts of stuff. Primarily in here, we've updated things like uniform patch locations, number locations, changed recruits a little bit, added recruit 3D model updates to make them look more realistic, added more rivalries, changed the name database so that there's more unique or more realistic names, changed captions for magazines and headlines and all sorts of other stuff, dialogues with coaches and players, and yeah, all sorts of stuff. The whole list of it here. Template.dat is how we control save files. So one of the things we did with the mod is added 120 teams. The original game only had 119 teams playable in a dynasty. So with the added team, we actually had to change how the saves behave. So that's one or two of the files in here. And on top of that, because we changed how the league structure, conference alignments are, there's a file in here that controls how scheduling behaves. So I've gone in and basically rewrote how schedules are created and made schedules for every conference in here. And then uniform.dat again are uniforms. So we've done a lot of modifications to uniforms too, by adding new ones for certain teams or fixing issues with uniforms where the texture mod has conflicts because it shares same pants or same helmets or same, well, maybe not helmets, but same pants or uniform jerseys. So we kind of made some changes around that as much as possible in here, and also fixed some teams that don't have names on the back of the jersey. And there's a lot more coming here. We have plans to increase the size of this uniform thing to, I don't know, 7,000 or so, or 9,000 uniforms in the future. So every team will have up to 20 uniforms, which will be a lot of fun and a lot of work. Anyway, back to the mod. Once you have all the files installed over here, first thing you want to do is press this install.bat. What this actually does is when you look in the data folder and you click on types, I have this sorted by detail. There's a bunch of files called QKL files, fe.qkl, game, and pl.qkl. These files are not necessary and they actually conflict with our mod. So this install.bat basically just deletes it for you automatically. You also can just go in and delete it yourself if you don't want to use that install. And then the other thing you can do is delete this demo folder. It's just extra space, unless you really want to play the old game demos for some of the Maddens and Arena Football, but it's not really necessary. So I delete that too, and that saves almost half the space on the game. So that's all done now. You can also delete this README file. So let's delete that. Let's go to image burn. So the next section here, we're going to create an image from the file or folder. Click on this browse button here, which is the magnifying glass, yellow magnifying glass folder here. And then you're going to go to, let's see, my desktop. And then click this next 23 folder that I just created, which is this one here. Press select, and then it'll show it as a source. And then you want to press this button here to start the process. It's the build button. Now it's going to tell you where you want to install it. Remember, I created a game folder inside my PCSX 2.1.7 emulator folder, so I'll just put it there. I'll call it NCAA23.iso. Press start, or press enter. Yes, and OK. And now it'll basically create the game. And then once it's done, you can press OK. You can get rid of this look. And then we can go into the emulator folder again, run the emulator. And you'll see now, if you have the folder correctly, it'll show up as the game here. And you can see that if you have the original game, let's see, let me show that as an example. I'll put the original game. I'll put the original game in the game folder, so they will both show up when I refresh. Scan. So yeah, you're just going to show two NCAA Football 06 games here. One is the mod and one isn't. What you can do is look at this bottom taskbar here. You can see this is the Next 23 mod, And then this one here is the original game because I named it that way. We can run the mod now. So let's double click on that and let it run. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I actually don't have my keys set up, so this is not going to work out too well for me. But we can see that the mod loaded here because we got this next folder or graphic show up. But I don't have my key map set up because I just put this new version in here. So what I'm going to do is close this and open up my original version, or the one I actually use. Remind me later. I don't have the current version, but I'll just go ahead and show you what one of my test versions look like for this demo. But you'll see that in the one that we just created, it did load correctly. So I press F4 to kind of change this to max here to make it go faster. And you can see it loads a lot faster than it used to. I also already updated some of the graphics, which I'll go over here. So you'll see this is the actual game mod. So you can play now. One way you can check to see if the mod works is you can scroll through. Actually, let me go the other way because it'll be faster. You can scroll through the teams and see if Charlotte shows up, or see if Coastal Carolina or Liberty here, or UTSA is another team that we created. So UTSA, you'll see, it's right here. And then one other thing that's kind of cool that I'll quickly show. Oops, wrong one. Well, we can show the rosters too. So the rosters are, if you don't need to do anything, no roster files. The game already has new rosters already built into it. So my current favorite quarterback right now, Michael Penix, is right here. You can see Cam Ward, JT Daniels is on West Virginia. We can go through Bryce Young at Alabama, Caleb Williams at USC, down and so on. And then dynasty mode, you can create a new dynasty. All the teams have their assigned head coaches already built in. If you even add in like an FCS coach, in this case, I had to pare down to 120 teams, so I had to pick the 120 teams I felt made sense to most. But Kennesaw State is not in here as a created team, but I had to take Air Force out. I had to take a few other teams out, but even if you go back and re-add them, let's say we add Jackson State and we replace them with, I don't know, Georgia Tech. And go back. We can see that even Jackson State has Deion Sanders as its head coach. So all the head coaches from both FBS and FCS are in here. And also a bunch of new, there's also a bunch of hidden coaches in the database that are available if you do the coaching carousel mod that I explain in one of my blogs on a Discord or on my website at android.dav. So you can also have potentially the availability of other coaches available if you do switch teams out or add new teams later on, or do the coaching carousel where it picks a random coach from the lower level. So we can press Dynasty Start here. Again, my max is still on. That's why everything is kind of at super speed. And then you'll see this is our new Dynasty screen. Athlon Sports has a new magazine logo look here. You'll see right away 2022 shows up. And we can go through recruiting changes. By default, the original game only had 3-star and higher, but we actually have changed the logic here so it allows for 1- and 2-star recruits to be recruited early on in season. We do have some new updates to the graphics for this one coming soon, which changes this to be the ESPN logo instead of the Old Spice logo. If you go to Athlon Sports, you can see the preseason poll. 120 teams now. That Jackson State team I just added has a pretty bad roster. relative to the other teams. So it's low ranked here. But you can see all the teams here are already preseason ranked to the 2022 preseason rankings. And then one of the things that we can see is the conference outlook. So you'll see the ACC has now 14 teams. The Big Ten has 14 teams, which includes Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska. The Big 12 has kind of its future next year lineup, which includes Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and Houston somewhere. I think I already passed them, Houston. American has been renamed AAC, Conference USA. Notre Dame's an independent, MAC, Mountain West. The Pac-12 now has actual 12 teams. Colorado and Utah are in it. And you can see here that Utah and Colorado are in the South. There are no divisions in the Pac now, but we haven't been able to figure out how to get rid of the no division thing and make it have a championship game yet. But hopefully that's something we work on in the future. SAC now has 14 teams. The Sun Belt, all the group of 5 conferences only have 10 teams in this mod, just because we're limited to doing that. But you can mod it yourself if you learn DB editing and some other features and change it however you want it. In my personal dynasty, the Sun Belt has 12 teams. And then Army is its own little FBS independent conference here, just so that we can make the other conferences a little bit larger. And still fit the 119. So that's kind of the preview of this. So let's go back out and into a game. I want to show you some cool texture modding features. UW and Washington State, why not? So UW is I'm an alumni there, so I love UW, and I'm gonna show this demo with UW. So you'll see right away we have a bunch of new graphics here. There's more coming to change this. Stadium has been updated with new graphics. Not every stadium, but most, the Pac-12 and some of the SEC and some various other conferences have some updates. So a lot of people may get bored of some uniforms. So like in this case, UW is using their traditional purple and gold here. If you don't like it, actually this is not a really good example because I don't have a backup uniform for UW or Wazoo. So let's change it to like Oregon. I have a away uniform made for Washington, but not for their home. So we'll go over the Ducks. I don't really like the Ducks too much, but we're going to go over them anyway. So we're going to switch over to my textures folder, 21214. In this folder, we have 2 folders called replacement and alternate replacement. Replacements is the actual folder where all the in-game textures are loaded from. So all of our mods are for graphics are in here. And within it, there's a general, which has general user interface graphics and bowl games. There's some stadiums, magazine covers, footballs, buttons, etc. So the team is sorted by conference, and within here, each team, we'll go to Oregon here. Oregon has the uniforms listed by home and away, alternate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and general. And general is mostly logos and stadium graphics, as you see here. If you're playing, you can actually change graphics on the fly, but so I'll show you that in this case. But some people will probably want to do this before you start the game. But as you see, if you don't want to play with Oregon, if they're all green here, what you can do is have 2 file folders open. So one's already in the replacement folder, and then the second one will be in this alternate replacement folder. So these are all the spare graphics that we created. So there's like 1,000 alternate uniforms in here, along with new broadcast logos, new footballs, all sorts of stuff in here. So you can kind of browse around and see what you like. But again, alternate uniforms, there's probably close to 1,000 uniforms in here for most teams. We'll go to Oregon. Oregon has by far the biggest database. They have it by year, and within each year, there's a ton of different uniforms. So we'll go ahead and just pick, let's say 2019. So again, we don't want to use this green one anymore. What we can do here, we can pick this this darker. Well, let's not pick a darker uniform. Let's pick this light uniform. Nightmare white. Yeah, I have no idea what this is, but we'll go ahead and do this. So what we basically do is we're going to take this home folder out. Let's move it over to here and take this alternate folder, put it into here. And then on your keyboard, if you're doing this within the middle of a game, you can press F9 once and then press F9 again. And you'll see the graphics are now changed. So now Oregon is wearing this really, really bright aluminum foil looking uniform. And if you want to change back, again, you just move folders back and forth and press F9 again, twice, and they'll go back to its original uniform. So there's a lot of customization available here. So let's just try this here. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, this is a dark uniform with highlighter green colors, numbers. So, pretty cool. Again, every team has a set of uniforms in here, and then we're going to add a lot more. There's a lot more coming. We've started working on 2022 alternates. One of the other things you'll see here is this broadcast logo, which a lot of people update. I have it already updated to this ESPN logo, but we can play around. So under general in the replacements folder, there's a broadcast, and then this one's called ESPN football. If you go to the alternate, you also go to the broadcast folder. There's a bunch of different versions in here that you can play with. We can move this ESPN one back out. It's under static, so I'll put it back under static. And then you can play around. So if you want to, I don't know, put our next logo back in, but you're an Oregon fan for some reason, you can put the next green yellow in, press F9 twice, and now you got this kind of Oregon looking NCAA next logo showing up here. If you don't want that, just move it back. I don't know, let's say your game's being played on NBC Peacock because you're Notre Dame or something. You can press twice, and now you got an NBC logo. Now your game is on NBC. So that's some of the cool features that we've added. Lots of customizability available, and you can play around, see what's available, and change the game up however you want. So with the broadcast logo, it actually shows up in a bunch of different places. So it shows up here too. And then you'll also see it shows up on the main menu. So that's it. If there are any questions, please feel free to post in the comments. I don't check the comments very often, but I'll try to take a look at them as soon as I can. But the best way to reach us is on our Discord channel, which is at NCAAnext.com. You can go up to the more here or make your browser bigger, and it should show up as a Discord, or go to discord.ncaanext.com and find us there. All right. Thank you very much, and have fun playing.